There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today we have another amazing guest. He started as Skimbleshanks in the 2016 Broadway revival of Cats. So welcome, Jeremy Davis, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I am excited. I've talked to a handful of Skimbles. I've talked to some of the other people I'm sure you've worked with, and I am still not positive on my consensus for your character. So we're going to get into that. But before we get there, and before we get to the rumor mill and some of the stuff that I know is written about Skimble online, I want to start with your cat's history.
Okay.
So before you became Skimble, how familiar were you with the play and the musical?
Not very. I did see it way back. I was probably 9 or 10 years old when my parents took me to see it. It was like a bus and truck tour that came through my hometown in Grand Forks, North Dakota. So like it was in the middle of nowhere. But I don't remember much about it except there were a bunch of people dressed up like animals and they were jumping around, and at the end one of them got into a spaceship and went up into the ceiling. But that's basically all I knew. And then of course, like I figured out as I got older and joined the business, I knew sort of what it sort of was, but I'd never seen it.
So just as a kid, how old were you when you saw that first time?
I think I was maybe 10 years old. Maybe.
I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
I still do. Now that you know that, do you quite like all that you know about the musical and the background of the musical? Do you question your parents for bringing you as a 10-year-old?
No.
No.
No. I think it's fun for kids. I mean, it can be a little scary sometimes for them. I remember once I was out in the audience, and I mean, I really liked to play with the audience.
Yeah.
And I would go get up really close to them, and I saw a little kid, and it was during the naming of cats, which can get a little creepy. I mean, we're all chanting in unison and staring the audience down. Yeah.
Cultish.
Well, I started to go out there and I saw a little kid, and this kid was maybe 3 or 4 seats in. So it wasn't even like she was really close to me, but I took one step towards her. I mean, just one step, and she jumped over people next to her to get away from me.
Wow.
So she was terrified. And so, yeah, I mean, I know it can be a little scary for kids or adults for that matter, but I don't know. I don't remember much about that day, but I remember having a good time.
It's scary for adults even too, because I was also 3 seats in or whatever, and I was not expecting it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that like really haunted me the first time, where I was just like, oh wow, they're here. They're here, like they're out. And it's especially the green eyes where it's dark and all of a sudden it flashes in your face. And
yeah,
I was very glad I wasn't on there. The more I've learned the plot, the more I'm sitting here going like, do we really want kids to be thinking about Demeter being sexually abused and the orgy in the middle of the play? And like, are we cool with the plot line?
Do you think kids catch that plot line? I mean,
I didn't catch it as an adult, so no,
right.
I don't. But but it's there.
Yeah,
it's definitely there. So you're just
it's
whatever.
there. Yeah,
whatever. We move on. You go and see it. You enjoy it. You go out to scare kids. Did you ever? Tyler told me. I think it was Tyler told me he got hit. Did you ever get hit by anybody in the crowd?
No,
okay.
I didn't get hit. But you know what felt like getting hit once? I was again going out in the audience, and I saw a friend of mine. And I thought, oh, I think that's John. So I went over to him, and he was on the end. And I got right up at him, but he was stoic. He was staring at the stage, and he would not look at me. He was ignoring me. I mean, totally ignoring me. And it felt like, oh, doesn't he see me? Oh, this is terrible. Oh, John, if you're listening to this, it was not that bad, but.
That is great. So you sought him out. You're like, I got a friend out here.
I was I know this guy. I'm gonna go get him. He's gonna love it. And he did not like it at all.
Did not care. Did not enjoy it. So now you're an adult. You get cast as Skimbleshanks.
Yes.
Let's hear I love hearing what you were told. Let's hear the 3 words, what backstory, like tell me what you were given about Skimbleshanks.
Okay. Well, we got, for the first day or two, I think maybe just the first day, it might've been 2 days. We sat in a circle and Trevor Nunn gave us the whole genesis of Cats, from Andrew Lloyd Webber, Lord Lloyd Webber, contacting him and saying, I want to do a show based on T.S. Eliot's Cats, and this is what I want it to be. And Trevor and company trying to figure out how to weave all these poems together, and make some semblance of a story, and how, like, the whole thing. And it took all day or maybe 2 days for him to tell us this whole thing. I'm
40 episodes in trying to figure it out. So I wish someone would just had invited me and I could have saved all of us the hassle.
Well, there's several, I mean, those people who created it are several decades in, and I think they still are kind of not sure about it all. But, but during that whole time, there wasn't a lot of backstory to it all. And I think that's because most of the actual, like, backstory that becomes like the Cats lore was created over the course of the many decades and many productions of the show. So throughout rehearsal, we sort of pick up on the stuff that some of us know, or more of us know, or some we've heard this about these characters, and I've heard this theory, and sometimes we would talk with the creators about it, but most of the time it was us, like, figuring out the stuff and sort of putting our own spin on it.
Yeah, I mean, that is a consensus, and that's, if you look at the rumor mill, the consensus is there is no consensus, and then there's all kinds of pieces of, like, which I have figured out a little bit, especially with your cast, because I've interviewed a lot more of your cast, that these people were friends before, and so even though their cats maybe weren't supposed to be super friendly, it's hard for them because they have chemistry on stage to not have some type of dynamic, and that is the part that fascinates me about the show. So what were you told, though? Like, not necessarily all the backstory, I guess. What were you told, and what blanks did you fill in yourself?
I was told, what were my 3 words? They were caring, self-serving, and bright. So those were my 3 words that Trevor gave me. And those were very helpful things. Caring was a really beautiful thing for me to play with, and that became a very, very fundamental part of my work of building the character, because it also goes sort of hand in hand with the overall emotional theme of the show. Mm-hmm. So that was very, very helpful. And I mean, self-serving is then a very fun thing to play in opposition to caring, because caring is about, I care about all you out there, and self-serving is, I care about me. Mm-hmm. So that was a really fun thing to go back and forth with. I was also, we played a lot with the sort of type A-ness of Skimble, the punctuality of it, the wanting to follow the rules and sometimes dictating the rules. That was a big part of what we talked about initially as well.
Mm-hmm. Did you think of, and I think the answer is probably no, but did you think about, like, this is my brother, this is my parents, this is who I am in this is potentially my wife, not wife, they're cats, but, like, did you think about any of that? Or especially as you start staging yourself on, like, you're going to be dancing mostly with this person or spend most of the time over here?
You mean base the character on somebody I knew? Is that what you were talking about?
No, I mean, I'm more of, like, I find it fascinating I've been trying to figure out the Cats family tree, and there clearly isn't one. Oh. But I'm wondering, do you think about that stuff as you perform, of, like, oh, this is probably, I'm probably this cat's brother?
Well, not initially.
No, okay.
Not initially. And actually, I had done some, this is so geeky, but I had done some, like, journaling and work before we got to rehearsal, I created a Skimbleshanks journal, which was like Skimbleshanks keeps a daily journal.
That feels on brand for Skimbleshanks,
doesn't it?
Yeah.
And in it, I sort of created a backstory of my own for him, like where he came from and how he got to be a part of the tribe. And I don't know if this gels with everything else, but I sort of thought he was an outsider that came in, because I had imagined that he was living in Manchester and was running from some dogs or something, and sought refuge on the train as it was stopped at the station. And after it took off, he sort of found his home for life. And then he just sort of rode the train back and forth until that one night every year when he would show up at the junkyard and see his whole tribe. So I didn't really think of myself as blood family to any of the other cats, but I certainly thought of them as my found family.
Interesting. Okay, I like this, because you're basically saying Skimble's not really deep in this tribe or part of this tribe. Even you're an outsider, and you're just on the train, so you kind of come in and out, and then you make sure you catch the train back for the ball each year. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm always there for the ball.
So you're not really family per se. You're just.
I didn't really hit that idea really hard every night, but it was in my mind. Yeah.
Interesting. I like that. And that's, again, this is why this musical fascinates me, because here's a different take on something I haven't heard. And I've talked to 4 or 5 Skimbles, I think. And that's a slight nuance to this take of this like backstory there. And It is amazing to me that there is so much to this show compared to most every other show. It's like, no, this is the character. You're supposed to play it this way, or it's based off of a real person, or, it's like it's written with an arc and a background and a history. And here, most of these cats don't have it. You can make some assumptions, and there's some that have been probably clearly stated by Andrew Lloyd Webber or somebody else.
Yes.
But there's a lot that's just really up in the air.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I love the show so dearly, because there is so much room for interpretation, and not even just with our production in comparison to all other productions, but every night. Every night on stage, at least half of the show was improvised.
Wow.
I mean, not the steps. But any time we were interacting with each other, 5 times out of 10, it was something I'd never done before. So, that's really fun.
Yeah. So now, with that in mind, with the I'm an outsider taking the train, I'm coming for the ball, do you even view Skimble as a potential candidate for the Heaviside Layer?
Yes, but he's self-serving. He likes the idea. I liked the idea of maybe getting chosen, but I also liked being Uncle Skimble to the tribe. I think that maybe because I was thinking of him as a visitor, or a part of the found family, not part of the blood family, that I took great pleasure in feeling loved by them and love for them, and that I didn't really want to leave it yet. So, I remember when I would do the number, thinking part of it was I wanted to present myself as a candidate for going up to the Heaviside Layer. But actually the biggest thing in my mind doing that number was to entertain these kids. All these kittens, I wanted them to have the best time. And I would sometimes look back at Q, who played Deuteronomy, at Quentin Darrington.
Mm-hmm.
And he, oh God, he's the best. He was always so in it. And I would always, anytime I looked back at him, I'd catch his eye, and he was so like full of love and generosity. And that's sort of why I did it. I wanted to get people to feel that kind of stuff as Skimbleshanks.
Yeah, which I love. And I think it's so it's fun because he's a character that I never really knew is he really in the running? Like, do we really consider him? Does
I
he
don't
want
think
to
he
be in
really
there?
is. I mean, I don't think he really is in the running. He's in the lore of it. He is one of the older cats, but he's not Gus, and he's just one of the adults. And I think he may want to do it. Obviously he may want to get reborn at some point, but it's not his time yet.
Yeah, it is. He definitely does feel like the uncle.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk about your song.
Yeah.
Because I think there's some stuff that happens in the song that as an outsider watching in, I did not pick up on and made me very concerned. And so I got called out on this because I called Skimble the creepy uncle.
Okay.
And it's because of the way I interpreted the song, which I believe now I understand what's happening. But I think you're telling a story to the kittens. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that basically what happens in the song? Because let me tell you what I saw. And I watched mostly the 1998 movie because that's what's on YouTube. And I saw your cast twice, but I don't remember 90% of what I saw. I was so mesmerized by the whole thing, and a little intoxicated the second time.
That's a good way to see it.
Yeah, I wish someone had told me the first time, but I did not get that heads up the first time. At one point, it looks like you pretend to take your pants off.
That's right.
At one point, it looks like you bribe old Deuteronomy by offering him a mouse.
Uh-huh.
And then there's this kind of random sneeze that's very kind of tongue-in-cheek.
Uh-huh.
And then you build the train, which is, I think, this like kind of really cool thing. But the first time I saw it, I was like, did he just pretend to take his pants off in front of like 5 kittens on the ground?
Yeah.
Like that threw me off. And I think the answer is that you're telling a story and you're just pretending to change into your like night clothing or something. But like, what's going on there?
Okay. That's a good question. When I was taught the number, so that, in our show, our production in particular was a little bit different because we had Andy Blankenbuehler involved and he was sort of redoing a bunch of it. But then we also had original stuff as well. And my number was pretty much entirely original. And so when I was learning it from Chrissy Cartwright, who was sort of our link to the original, she's done it. I mean, she's been a part of the show since the beginning and said it in more countries than I could name. But we got to that part and she was like, and then you pretend to take your pants off. And I said, and I was like, why? She's like, oh, and she didn't really have an answer. She said, oh, because it's funny. And so I was like, okay. And I guess I sort of decided that I had to figure it out for myself. So I decided in the story that I was telling, I was in the cabin as a passenger on the train, and I was imagining that this passenger was getting all set for bed, but then the window blows open or the door, slides open and he gets caught. That's sort of what I thought might be the issue there, but it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me initially either.
I love that the answer to most of these questions are, I don't know.
Yeah.
It didn't really. Yeah, sure. Because whoever did drugs and wrote this the first time just thought you should do that.
We're singing poetry and dressed up as giant cats.
Yeah. Yeah. The logic and reasoning are kind of out the window just in the entire beginning of this.
I tell people, like when people would come to see the show, they'd ask me what it's about. And, or before, and especially if they came beforehand, I would tell them, look, if you are coming to this show and seeking a logical narrative, then you're going to be disappointed. But if you come here looking for poetry, then you might have a different experience because, the lyrics are all poetry, literally. Mm-hmm. And then dance is sort of the poetry of movement. It doesn't always communicate it doesn't communicate words, but it definitely can communicate deep and strong emotion, which in the same way that actual poetry can. And so if you open yourself to thinking, I don't need a plot for this, then you might have a transcendent experience. And so that's sort of what I used to tell people. If you want to look for a plot, that's fine. you'll have a hard time finding it. If you look at it as poetry and more of a feeling, then maybe you might create your own story.
I have definitely created many stories from this. I wish, again, somebody would have told me anything. Now, I had a problem when I got to New York that I would just end up with lottery tickets or find something and I would have no idea what I was going in to see.
Yeah.
And I'm not very experienced on like the history of most of these things. So someone's like, oh yeah, of course you should know this show. And I'm like, I've never heard of it, but it won a Tony and the tickets were $20. And I was living near especially when I first got to New York, I was living right near all the theaters.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll go. And that caused me some problems. Like a couple shows it was not what I expected. Like Fun Home was definitely one that threw me off. That title is it makes sense when I figured out what it was, but not when I saw what I thought it was going to be. And there's a couple others that were like that. But Cats, I just knew it was this like lore. I was like told, oh, this is something you should just have to go see.
Yeah.
And not much else. And the tickets I got for my friend is in set design. And so they were like, by the way, look around because this set's incredible. Mm-hmm. And so that was all I knew going in. Nothing else. And I know myself as I am that like a neat, tidy sitcom-ish story, like beginning, middle, end. And I did not get that.
Yeah.
So I wish someone would have given me the advice you're just giving future listeners or listeners who are going to see the show in the future.
Yeah.
Is just go embrace the poetry. Do something to have an experience, but don't try to tell the plot. Now, I've spent 40, 50 episodes trying to tell the story myself. Sure. And I've loved doing it, but it's not there. And it's not there well. And then when it is there, I've got some arguments with like, I have some gripes with the way that story was told.
Sure.
So I want to pivot to one piece that I've heard the other half of this, but when I was doing my research and I was going through each character and trying to figure out and looking at the dark web rumor mill of everything Cats related, one thing really jumped out that kind of surprised me, which was the relationship between Skimble and Tugger.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, I have no idea what's happening. Like, it's kind of really weird. It's like a bullet point online that's like, there's something going on between the two. And it probably started from the 2016 revival. And so I heard Tyler's version of it. Tyler Haynes, who played Tugger.
Yeah.
And I know you're the other half of this. And I believe I talked to someone from the Junkyard who helped influence this. But like, what happened here that you basically an entire rumor mill on the internet is because of you, Tyler, and the Junkyard? Yeah,
it really is. I had forgotten that it really came from the fans. Well, I heard your interview with Tyler, and I thought, oh yeah, that's right. I actually remember being out. I remember that came from them, and because it ended up becoming such a close part or such a well-worn part of the show and of our performances that I just sort of assumed that it had been there from the beginning. But I had forgotten that it came from the fans. But the success of that relationship or that idea of that relationship really is due to how amazing Tyler Haynes is. He was the greatest Tugger I could have ever hoped for. And it was because Tyler, just like Tugger, might have done anything at any moment. You didn't know what was going to happen. It was like being inside of a hurricane. He was so fearless. And one day he just, after we'd heard, that idea, one day on stage, he just sidled up to me on stage and we started playing.
That is phenomenal. I do love that. Again, there's not many shows that have the ability for that to even happen.
Yeah.
To where there's the freedom to say like, hey, this kind of rough idea could come from a fan. And then really, because the plot's so loose, that there could be that interpretation and not dramatically change like the whole story. Like you couldn't do that in most of the other night. I don't know enough Broadway shows to like give parallels. Everyone always is telling me what different versions of Cats are, but I'm it amazes me that you could do that. And I love that it was there. And I love that it kind of continued after. And I think like now I'm wondering what would be if you could go influence one thing, like as someone who knows the show, what would be the thing you would be like, look, the show's coming back. Here's one thing I think should happen that didn't happen.
I don't know. I don't know. I would have to really meditate on that, I guess. Man, I've never thought of that. I don't know. This is going to sound so cheesy, but please forgive me. I have a deep, deep, deep love affair with cats. I am head over heels in love with the show. And I had the experience of doing it was my favorite thing I've ever done professionally. So I look back on it and I just think I loved every part of it. I don't know if I could think, man, I wish this was done differently or anything like that. I was so happy with it the whole time.
Yeah, that's so fair. My goal is to influence not the story, but someone's backstory. And then just to see a slight change in it. I can tell you one that I would like to see.
Love to hear it.
And that I don't think is going to be dramatic. I want to see the relationship of Bustopher Jones basically being the money behind McCavity's crime mob and Mungo Jerry and Rebel Teaser. Like, I want that. Him being the money, McCavity being kind of the mob boss. And then those two kittens being kind of like the kleptos that are in there. Yeah. I want a little bit more there. I wanted to pull that together. Like, I think we could tie just a little bit into that backstory. I think that one would be fun.
That would be fun. I like that idea. There was some talk about what if we could really adapt some stuff. And in the middle of Bustopher Jones's number, there's a moment where Rump and Mungo like pickpocket him. Like they reach in like slow motion and grab his watch, and that takes us, and the whole stage like flips back as they go and follows them back to McCavity's lair, where they lay the watch down in front of him, and then we really get to see McCavity right then and sort of set that up. So that wouldn't be, Bustopher wouldn't be like the money behind it, but I mean he sort of would be because he was the mark that they robbed. But that was one of the things that was sort of talked about a little bit, but it obviously didn't end up happening.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a million of it too, because you just have so many characters that you can play with. I think there's another one that I've always thought has some legs is a love triangle between Bustopher, Jelly, and Grisabella.
Oh, that's fun.
And I think there's some angles there
that
fun. You could play with.
I never thought of Grizz being that old, actually. But I mean, I sort of felt that she was probably as old as any of the other adults, like Skimble.
Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't see her as like the Gus age or Deuteronomy age.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think I had Gus and Deuteronomy and maybe Jenny. And then I had kind of these other adults in that kind of same range, like the McCavity, Bustopher, and a couple other. It's like the thing is, it just depends too, because I know that two of your Jennies were also on the younger side, and so it felt like as actual actors. Yeah,
I always thought of Jenny as a younger adult cat, also because Skimble and Jenny have a lot of stage time together and have a real relationship. I mean, I always Eloise and I think I only ever did it with. I didn't get to do it with any of the after Eloise left. I had already left, but she and I never really talked about our relationship too much. But we definitely played it as if we were like intimate, casual life partners.
The rumor is that you are together because, and again, I don't know which production this is from, is that you hold hands at a point. And so that was where that rumor came from.
Well, I don't remember ever holding her hand, but we certainly purred around each other quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's another rumor that you're Rebel Teaser's uncle.
Okay. I'm
but
okay
then
with
it didn't
that.
say anything about Mungo Jerry or like any other cat. I kind of assumed you were the uncle for a lot more.
Yeah.
And then that you were Corp Cat. I never said that one right.
How do you say that? Coracopat.
Coracopat. This is the one that threw me off, and this is in the rumor mill, is that he's your adopted son.
Okay.
And I could not figure out how the family trees are already very, very loose. And then all of a sudden they're going to throw in an adoption.
Yeah.
Really threw me. But that was one that's also on the rumor mill. Is there anybody else that you thought of that was like, okay, here's probably nephew, niece, somebody else I'm probably with?
I thought of all of the kittens as my nieces and nephews. I felt like they were all my adopted kids in some way.
Yeah, which kind of fits your backstory of that you're not really from their tribe or there. You took the train, you were on the run. Yeah. I kind of like the story of like, I think we have a backstory for Skimble that you're on the run and you've kind of found your what's it called? Like it's like your protected, what's when the FBI throws you into
witness protection.
Your witness protection program is the Jellicles.
I like that too.
Did that make your journal, or am I just adding too much layer into that?
I mean, that my journal, I was thinking that I had found the train as sort of my safe haven from danger. But I love the idea of the tribe being the real safe haven.
Yeah. And then that's so you're in now, and you're the uncle, and you've got your way through.
Yeah.
What else have I missed about this show? Like, I've obviously talked a lot about it, but as someone who is passionate about it, a fan, and been in it, what are the things that like I really either got wrong or missed or that I need to know?
I mean, I talked about it already, but I think the main thing is that this is really more of an emotionally themed show than anything else. So I think the people who hate it for good reason, because they're looking for a story that is really hard to get as an audience member. As a cast member, that story is very rich and alive. But unfortunately, it doesn't always or often even come across to the audience. So I understand when people are frustrated with it. But the people who really, really love it, and they really do love it, it's because they are following the emotionality of the show. The whole thing from start to end is about a tight-knit group of cats who are shunning a former member of their tribe, right? They hate her for something that she has done, something terrible. Probably. We don't really know what it is, and she probably deserves to be punished in some way. But by the end of the show, all of us as a group, come to see her as not someone to punish, but someone to understand and have pity on. She's fallen so low and regrets what she's done. And so by the end of it, we've gone from this like aggressive, attacking group of people to one that opens up its heart to empathy. And I think that's why people who love the show love it. They experience some sort of journey of that.
Yeah. It is when you watch it, there's probably one character, because of how many there are, that you can relate to, or you can kind of feel some peace to. It's also an incredibly visually appealing show. Like, it is mesmerizing to watch as someone who's not a dancer or a singer or have any of those abilities. That was the one thing, as I kind of poked fun at the story and the whole thing. And the first time I saw it, I also walked out going, that looked incredibly difficult. Like, that looked so challenging to do. And then doing it in that makeup, in that chaos. And I mean, most of you are on stage most of the time. I was like, that's a 2 hour and 45-minute workout that you're going to do 8 times a week. And so I appreciated that. And I didn't even realize at the time that it's so daunting that there's people singing like to support you because of how challenging that is.
Yeah, it's a tough job. I mean, it's a really tough dance. It's a tough sing. I didn't realize that before I got involved in it. And you're on stage the whole time. But that's also part of the thing that makes it great. When you get done every night, you felt like you'd accomplished something amazing, something very, when you do something really hard and you get done with it, you feel really proud of it.
Yeah.
And then to be on stage for 2.5, 2:45 every night and to be in character for all that time and to be like, it was just really, really exciting.
That's fun. It seems fun. But again, I don't have the ability to do any of this stuff. So I kept watching going like, wow, like that looks hard.
Yeah.
But that was the part that it kind of did draw me a little bit to it, is that I, someone who likes sports, and I've, someone who played sports, it's like, okay, I know what is happening, but the speed that they're doing it at, or like the precision they're doing it at, is great. For me, I've never tried to do any of the dance numbers. And so I'm looking at it going like, well, that looks really hard, really difficult. And it looks like the precision and the timing and everything being so perfect was incredible to watch.
That's great.
I do find it when, you said the people who hate it, I've yet to run, and I'm seeking somebody out. I really want to talk to someone who hates the show. Every person I've met that hates the show, I go, well, what did you not like about it? And no one has a good answer. No one has an answer like at all. It's just like, oh, I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, was it the story? Was it like, because I could argue my gripe with the show was I didn't like the plot line. That doesn't exist, and I don't like the ending.
Yeah.
I think the wrong choice was made. But that doesn't mean that I dislike the show.
Yeah.
And so everybody who's like, I didn't like it, it's like, well, no, you don't really have a reason. You can't explain a reason. So if anybody, there's nobody who hates the show is going to be listening to this. But if anybody who knows somebody who hates the show and can tell, like, I want to talk to somebody who has like a thoughtful reason of why they dislike it, and I've yet to find that person. I think it's an easy punchline.
Sure it is.
And that's why it's made fun of so often.
Yeah.
Because it's so unique and so different. It's an easy one to poke fun at.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do some rapid fire, and then I want to get into the philosophical debate about Grisabella.
You got it.
So first is, if you could play any other character, forget if you could sing the notes or could do the dances or anything. If you just could play anybody, who would you want to play?
I think, well, I mean, this might just be because Gurr was so unbelievably amazing, but I would like to play Gus.
Want to play Gus, yeah. But that means you also got to do Bustopher.
Yeah, but that's fun too. Like, you get to play a couple different roles throughout the show.
And Peter, the worst character in the whole show.
Poor Peter. Poor Peter. Bill Bailey and Victor and Peter.
Yeah,
they just disappear. But no, I think I'd like to play Gus. Gus was always my favorite part of the show whenever I was swung out and I watched it. But again, that is probably because Christopher Gurr gave one of the greatest performances that I've ever seen.
Yeah, he was phenomenal.
Oh, I loved him.
Who's your favorite and least favorite cat?
My favorite cat. I think I gotta go with. That's a tough one too. I love all the kittens. I love all those kittens. And again, I'm just getting sort of caught up in my own work on it. I'm seeing my feelings as Skimbleshanks feelings. Yeah. So I love all those kittens immensely. I love Jenny and I love Tugger. I just love all of them. And I don't know if I can tell you, this is you're going to see it as a cop-out, but I don't think I have a least favorite cat.
There's got to be one that bugs you.
Who bugs me? I mean, Tugger bugs me.
Yeah.
Tugger was sort of my favorite and my least favorite as Skimble.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I think the twins kind of creep me out the more I learn about them.
Oh, I like the twins. I love that psychic connection.
It's always been Peter for me. Peter's the worst cat. Peter, I don't think needs to be there. Favorite song?
Skimbleshanks.
Of course. Okay, but I'm gonna take that one out.
Oh, okay.
Give me another one.
I love McCavity. I mean, I think it's sort of a usual favorite. I think McCavity is really, really fun and great and sinister and twisted.
Yeah. It when I first saw it, it's not the one that like stuck out. As I researched and like started to listen to songs more, listen to it, it's the one that gets stuck in my head the most.
Yeah.
So I'm with you there. Which cat do you think is thriving in 2021?
Thriving in 2021. I guess Cassandra, I would think. Cassandra's always seemed like the immortal cat, and she seems like she would be doing pretty well in lockdown.
Yeah.
I think she's okay by herself. Yeah, I think Cassandra.
Okay. I've heard some interesting debates for that. And so I found it. I originally thought Busterfer because he probably is like just eating up as much as he can. He is not moving very much anyways. There's been some arguments for like, this person's probably become a TikTok influencer with some of the kittens. So I think there's a couple ways to go with it.
Yeah.
But I originally thought Busterfer. That was my kind of answer.
That's cool. I like that.
Okay. The $1 million question. I've argued at length that I don't think Grisabella is the right choice.
Yeah.
Do you think Grisabella is the right choice for the Heaviside Layer? And if so, I want to hear your argument. And if not, I want to hear who you're picking.
I have two answers.
Two answers.
Yes. If it's really only one answer.
Okay.
But I'm going to get to it in a very long-winded way, which is sort of just the way I am. If we're talking about who deserves it, who has lived a virtuous life and who needs it and who really deserves it, then Gus. Then definitely it should be Gus. Gus is old. He's probably going to die right after. I think Gurr talked about this once. Part of Gurr's show is that after the ball, he goes off quietly and passes on alone in the junkyard. So it's his last chance. And he's so amazing. He's just great. It should be Gus if it's supposed to be the person who deserves it or the cat who deserves it. But it's not. It's not. The show is about inclusion and acceptance, forgiveness, redemption, empathy. And if that's the case, then it can only be Grisabella. It can only be the cat who we have pushed away and called names and spit at all night long until we finally understand the sadness that she lives in now. And how once we understand that sadness and can take it on ourselves and see life through her eyes, then we can forgive her and accept her back in and give her the chance to redeem herself by being reborn into the Heaviside Layer. So that's my argument for Grisabella.
So let me ask you at least one follow-up question.
Sure.
You gave two different criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Who's making the choice of which criteria the Jellicle should use? Is that an old Deuteronomy decision?
Well, it's a show. Yeah, it's an old Deuteronomy decision, but the show really is about that journey. And I know, like, the emotional journey of the show is from attacking and shunning to forgiving and accepting. And if you're following that emotional journey, which I hope people are, then it has to be Grizz.
So here's my other kind of quick counter question part with that. If that is the show arc, which I don't, disagree. It's clear that is the decision. Decision's made, as much as I dislike it or disagree with it. I would argue that Grisabella would be better being accepted back to go the next year.
I could see
have
that.
A year through here.
I could see that, but the problem with a stage show is that it's just this one night. We don't get to wait the whole year.
I'm ignoring, I'm ignoring that this is a musical or a show or anything. I'm like, I want to know like what's going on tomorrow with the cats.
Yeah.
I'm asking the backstory, like how did we get here? Why is this happening? Like I think it's a next year choice. I could get that argument.
Okay.
But
I understand that point of view. But I don't think so. I mean, and maybe this also comes from my work on the show for myself personally. But one of the things I wrote in my Skimbleshanks journal was seeing Grisabella for the first time after many years, after she had left the tribe, and not recognizing her at first, and just seeing her as I was going to the ball and passing this pitiful whore, this pitiful old whore of a cat that like I walk past and I think, oh, that's so sad. And as she passes, we catch eyes and she turns away. And in that moment, I realized she turned away because she recognized me. And then when I realized she recognized me, I recognized her. So I have real empathy for that character, and I understand how important it would be for her to be reborn and get a second shot at life.
That is a very thoughtful approach to it. I'm surprised that in Skimbleshanks' life, that Skimbleshanks wouldn't have run into her. Like she leaves, you're on the train all the time. You're out, you're not in the tribe all the time. Wouldn't she be the highest likely cat to have maybe crossed paths with Grisabella at some point?
I suppose.
Yeah.
I suppose. No, but I didn't imagine that had happened. I sort of thought that she had gone off. I don't think Skimble spends a whole lot of time in town outside of the junkyard. I think he goes from the station to the junkyard, and when he's done, he hits back to make sure he catches the train to go back north. But so I hadn't imagined that he had seen her since the olden days.
I'm coming around to Grisabella. I'm still not there.
I don't need you to come around. You have everybody, especially cats, but all shows, people interpret things in their own way and they feel their own feelings about it. And I can't tell you that what you're feeling or thinking is wrong.
I appreciate that. I'm trying to tell everybody that the show is written incorrectly and that forget 40 years of success. I think this would be even better if we changed the ending.
Who do you think should go out there?
Oh, you could answer this. Again, it goes back to your criteria question, because Gus is the most worthy. I have, and everyone who's listened, I've given my take. I'll give the short version, but I saw Leona Lewis, and so I thought X Factor, and I thought, what is going to perform? Like if I'm truly on a singing competition and Simon Cowell's Old Deuteronomy, and us in the audience are voting, I thought you're going to mix Tugger and Misto together, and they're going to go together as a combination. That doesn't fit most any other criteria. If you break down the show, you think about it. But if I was thinking, well, which ones are going to get the votes from home?
Yeah. Those
were the two that to me were like really entertaining and fun. I think now like the other argument would be McCavity's song is also pretty crazy and wild. And there's some others, like there's a lot to it. I think that if I had a full season of cats, like an X Factor, then they would have played me Grisabella's backstory 10 times with some nice package before she comes up and sings Memory. And maybe that would have, got some votes from America or England. But that was the way I interpret it. So that's how I've always kind of answered that question. I still think Gus is the most logical choice.
Yeah.
But Gur did kind of change my mind of like, he doesn't think that there's another life. He thinks he's done either way.
Yeah.
So I just like debating all of them.
Yeah.
It's fun to think about how the different ways it can go, because there is not a clean story arc, and there's not a clean kind of like beginning, middle, end, it's still like to this point, like, because I've only seen it twice in full, and I've seen the 1998 movie probably once or twice in full, and then clips of it all the time. So I'm not even sure I remember the order of everything that happens.
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes like, if it is just a show, it's like, well, you know, we're going to kick it off with this. And I watched a lot of those competition shows. So we're going to have the show stopping song at the end. Doesn't mean that show stopping song always wins.
Right.
But they cut it up really nicely for TV. And that was my frame of reference. And I'm very cognizant of the fact that it's because of the first Grisabella I saw.
I see.
And that was all I knew going in, is that she was doing it. I knew memory. And I knew that people were going to be dressed up as cats and nothing else.
Yeah.
And so I looked for a plot, probably more than I should have. And that's how I filled it in for myself.
That's great. I like that.
I'm wondering if anybody else in the world saw it that way. I think I'm definitely in the minority of viewing it from that
that's
angle.
One of the beautiful things about the show is that it leaves itself so open to fan interpretation and to fan theories. And I love that thing about it.
I agree. I think that's where, if I tell what you said at the beginning, is anybody that sees it now, not the new movie, but if they watch the 1998 movie, I say, just go watch the singing and dancing. Just like go appreciate the talent that it takes to do this, and like the kind of the fun and the humor of that, and some of like the interactions you're going to see. I was like, forget the rest.
Yeah.
The rest doesn't make sense. And then if you want to know, like, the rest is really, it's an orgy. There's some sexual abuse. This cat was probably, you know, a sex worker that's coming back. Like, we're actually murdering a cat at the end. Like don't dig too deep. It gets really dark. It gets real dark real fast. And it's probably a cult. See, all true. You're like, yeah, of course. That's it. Yeah,
I guess. I don't know.
That's the
stock answer for anything. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the fun. That's the fun of the show. Until Andrew Lloyd Webber or Trevor Nunn or Andy Blankenbuehler will come on and set the record straight for me.
Yeah.
Until that happens, I'm sticking with my stories.
I don't know if they could set it straight for you.
Yeah, it would just confuse me even more with different pieces where I'm like, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. But
that's what makes this fun. Well, final question is just, how can we find you on social media and stay in touch?
Jeremy Davis 76 is my Instagram. But I'm terrible at it. I'm so awful at social media. It's awful. I remember during the show, there was a photo taken of a few of us and somebody posted it, or maybe I posted it, and it got a comment like, "Oh my God, Skimble made it to social media," or something like that, you know? I'm terrible. It's mostly pictures of food that I've made.
That's great. That's what Instagram's for.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here, for telling me your background, your journal, and everything in between. It's been super fun to hear your take.
It's been such a pleasure. It's been, 4 or 5 years since I've been in the show, and like I said, I love the show dearly. So this has been really cool to revisit it again.
That's awesome. I'm glad. That's what I'm here for. I'm pretty much just here to give your cast the opportunity to relive their experience, and other casts now as I've talked to more. But I'm slowly but surely, I think my goal is to influence a future show, and that's what I'm here for. I can't imagine that you won't influence a future show. Hope. Yeah, I'm waiting when it comes back. So. Well, thank you again, and thanks everyone else for listening to this episode of The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. To follow along, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Wrong Cat Died, or check out our website, thewrongcatdied.com.